In December of 2025, the Federal Bureau of Investigation handed a cardboard box back to a man in southwestern Wyoming, and inside the box was a parachute, a modified rig pulled from a barn on the old family property of a man, Richard Floyd McCoy Junior. 5 months after the man the world calls D.B. Cooper vanished out the back of a passenger jet, McCoy did nearly the same thing. McCoy's own children believe he was Cooper, and McCoy has been dead since 1974. The Bureau took the rig in 2024, tested that parachute for roughly 2 years, and in December of 2025 gave it back to McCoy's son, Richard McCoy the Third, with 6 weapons. The material was neither being credited nor discredited. The closest anyone has ever come to catching D.B. Cooper produce, once again, exactly nothing. And here's the thing you have to understand about this case, that non-result is not the exception, it is the rule. Where's the rule? The hijacking itself was over 90 seconds, 54 years ago. That part is not the mystery. What has run in the 54 years since is something else. Vortex case whose evidence cannot hold an answer, where every suspect is proven, then demolished by the next. This is why every D.B. Cooper theory failed. So begin with the crime, the least mysterious thing about this case. On the 24th of November 1971, a man in a dark suit and a black clip-on tie under the name, he boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305, Boeing 727, bound for Seattle. Shortly after takeoff, he passed a note to a flight attendant, showed her a briefcase of wires and red cylinders, and said you said it was a bomb. He wanted $200,000 in $20 bills for a parachute stunt. But the name the world remembers him by is a mistake. He never said to be a reporter for the Oregon Journal. At Seattle, the money and the parachutes came aboard, and the passengers were released. Cooper ordered the plane back up, low and slow, toward Mexico City, and somewhere over the forests of southwestern Washington, in cold rain, at about 10,000 feet, he lowered the aft air stairs, walked down them, and jumped into the dark with the money strapped to him. When the plane landed at Reno, the air stair was down and Cooper was gone. He left one thing behind on the seat, his black clip-on necktie. Hold on to that tie. It matters more than anything else in this story. He was never found. Not that night, not in the search that followed, not in the 54 years since. The FBI codenamed the case Norjack and produced a composite sketch from the crew's memory. And only 2 physical facts from everything that followed matter for what comes next. In February of 1980, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram uncovered rotting bundles of the ransom on a Columbia River beach called China Bar. $5,800, still the only ransom ever recovered, and how it reached that beach has never been explained. The second fact came in July of 2016, when the FBI suspended the case. Everything else in this case sits on those few hard facts, like scaffolding on a building that was never actually there. Before we walk the suspects, be precise about why none of them can be confirmed. The case does not lack answers because the trail went cold. The first is the composite sketch, the most reproduced artifact of the case and one of the least reliable. It was drawn from the memories of flight attendants under great stress and a sketch that loose does not exclude suspects, it accommodates them. Nearly any middle-aged man in a suit can be made to resemble it, which is precisely the problem. It is a Rorschach test. The second weakness is the physical evidence, which is thin and partly lost. The tie is the case's only productive forensic source, but it has been DNA tested twice and produced no usable profile. The recovered money is real but partial. Larry Carr, the FBI agent who ran the case from 2007, has stated on the record that original material was thrown out over the years. Cigarette butts the hijacker smoked, a hair from his headrest, gone. The third weakness is the one the FBI itself effectively conceded in 2016. Read carefully, that is an admission. The Bureau was saying that after 45 years and a 66-volume file, the existing evidence could no longer distinguish one candidate from another. An unreliable sketch, thin and partly lost evidence, and a formal concession that the base cannot discriminate. Those three facts are the walls of the world. The suspect pool has swelled into the thousands. What follows is only the handful who each drew a serious champion. A book, a documentary, a family's belief, and who each was demolished. Everyone was, for a moment. Richard Floyd McCoy Junior is the strongest, which is why this episode opened on him 5 months after the skyjacking in April of 1972. He hijacked a 720 jump from the afters. His own children came forward after their mother's death in 2020 and argued their father was Cooper. His daughter produced a skydiving logbook showing 9 practice jumps before both hijackings, which reads as premeditation. And then the parachute, the rig surfaced a few years ago, found by an aviation broadcaster named Dan Grider in an outbuilding on the McCoy family land. He called it AI seized it in 2000, and the FBI seized it in 2024. And after 2 years of testing, in December of 2025, he handed the rig back to Richard. The material was neither credited nor discredited. The refutation is layered. The FBI ruled McCoy out decades ago on eyewitness grounds. The barn-stored DNA had degraded past a match. And the rig is not the parachute Cooper jumped with, so it cannot clear the 2016 bar. Robert Rackstraw was, for a stretch in the 2010s, the most publicized answer of all. Former Army paratrooper and explosives expert with a habit of hinting he might be Cooper. A producer named Thomas Colbert built a 40-person team, chased him across 20 states, and pointed to a coded confession letter that seemed to name him. The History Channel built a 2-part series around the theory, and it collapsed on camera. Rackstraw was 28. The witnesses described a man of 40, The attendant who spent 5 hours with Cooper said flatly he was not the man. The FBI had ruled him out in 1979, and when the identification failed, his camp fell back on the argument that the government was covering it up. Remember that fallback, the cover-up, it will come. Kenneth Christiansen carries a seductive detail. He actually works for Northwest Orient, the very airline Cooper hijacked, a former paratrooper who smoked, drank bourbon, which was good. And here is the closest any suspect has ever come to a positive witness. Shown photographs. The flight attendant who took Cooper's note reportedly said Christensen resembled her memory more closely than the others. And it still does not hold. He was too short and too slight for the descriptions. The mystery that anchored the theory that he paid cash for a house right after the hijacking was debunked. He took 17 years to pay off the mortgage. And paradoxically, Christensen was too skilled a parachutist to fit the profile. Cooper botched enough of his own jump that investigators doubted he was an experienced skydiver at all. Walter Recca came with the most dramatic evidence of any candidate, a confession of a Michigan paratrooper. He allegedly told a friend over hours of audio recorded before his death that he was calling. And the whole thing fell apart on geography. Recca's account had him landing near Coelum, roughly 150 miles from the flight path. The FBI tracked by radar a jump that is simply not compatible with that track. And the explanation for why the FBI never endorsed Recca, that he had worked for a CIA-linked assassination group and was being protected, offered without proof by the party selling the. Vince Peterson is the suspect the best forensic work points to, and it shows even good science cannot close it. In 1971, pure titanium was near exclusive to aircraft work. A researcher named Eric Willis mapped a rare alloy to Peterson's own daughter does not believe it. And here the science hits a wall. Willis's theory rests on an untested idea that a hidden spindle in the ties knot was never swapped. He sued the Bureau for Access and he lost, and the court ruled that the Freedom of Information Act compels the release of records like a necktie. 15 years of the most rigorous forensic work ever applied to this case has produced a job category, also industrial corridor. Raymond Sidney Russell is the newest name, and it is worth being precise about how new and how thin it is. He surfaced for the first time in FBI Vault Part 113. Released on the on paper, he is intriguing, living in Maine at the time, a former Air Force airman, and an inspector at a Boeing assembly plant, once an air traffic controller in Seattle. But the same files showed the Bureau cleared him. A handwritten note dated November of 1972 reads, "Eliminate Russell. Denied involvement. Biden very law-abiding and died in 1989. He is not breakthrough. He is a 54-year-old cleared lead resurfaced by a document release and briefly crowned by the internet before the same file showed why he was dismissed. So if the suspects churn, what keeps the machine turning? The engine is the FBI's own release of its files. Under the Freedom of Information Act, it publishes the case file numbered parts. Part 110 landed in October of 2025, 668 pages. And by early February of 1972, it showed some 325 suspects had already been investigated. Part 113 followed on the 6th of January 2026, 391 more pages. And this is the release that surfaced Raymond Sidney Russell, name that had never before circulated. So sit with what that means. In the year 2026, a document release added a new name to a pool already numbering in the thousands. A name the same file then showed had been cleared in 1972. The drip is not narrowing the field, it is widening the aperture. The files add suspects faster than they eliminate them. Because eliminating one requires evidence the base has lost, while adding one requires only a surviving page. And the science on the tie points the same way. Tom K keeps correcting the overreading of his data. The particles point to an industry, aerospace, metals, Boeing's orbit. They have never pointed to a person, and by their nature they cannot. So return now to the box in Wyoming and keep its beat straight. The rig surfaced a few years ago, found on the McCoy family land. In 2024, the FBI takes custody of it. It tests the parachute for roughly 2 years, and in December of 2025, it returns the rig to Richard McCoy the Third. The words relate to the family are that the agent could not offer any specific conclusion, that the material was neither being credited nor discredited, but that they had gotten all the data off it that they could. So why did the most credible lead in the case's history produce nothing? The rig had sat in a barn for more than 50 years. The DNA had degraded to roughly 7 of the... It is not the parachute Hooper jumped with, so cannot satisfy the 2016 bar, and the man it belonged to had been ruled out decades earlier on eyewitness testimony, according to this is the perfect miniature of the whole case, a unique rig, a matching logbook. The closest we have ever come, that is the honest description of the McCoy parachute, and there is a move that recurs across the suspect camps with striking regularity. When the identification fails to persuade, the champion explains the failure by reaching for a government cover-up. Colbert's camp, when the witnesses rejected Rexstraw, fell back on the FBI suppressing the truth. Rekka's publisher said the Bureau never endorsed him because he was CA, and protected the same move again and again. And it is worth being clear about why this move is so attractive, because it is structural, not paranoid. Each theory has a gap it cannot close, a witness who says no, a geography that fails, evidence that it was never testable or was lost. The cover-up hypothesis is the universal solvent because it is unfalsifiable. If the Bureau's silence is really the Bureau hiding the truth, then no non-endorsement can count against you. The absence of confirmation becomes the confirmation. Layered underneath is an incentive that rewards certainty over accuracy. Nearly every Cooper theory is attached to a commercial product. and the market does not pay for a plausible corridor. A researcher who names a man and declares it solved has a title, a trailer, a press conference, the Suspect Churn, because an entire economy is built on producing and destroying answers. And it never runs out of fuel. So put the pieces together and the shape resolves. This is not a case that happens to be unsolved. It is a case that cannot, given what it is made of, be solved. Start with the sketch, which the witness is disowned, which fits almost any middle-aged man in a suit, and which excludes almost no one. Add the physical evidence, a tie that twice yielded no usable DNA, money that is partial, and an original evidence that partly discarded across 50 years. So the items that might have ended the case with modern sequencing no longer. Add the 2016 concession and the FOIA Drip that adds names faster than it clears them. Each of those is a wall. Together they form a closed system, and inside it credible suspects can be generated indefinitely. McCoy, Rexstraw, Christiansen, Ricka, Peterson, and now Russell, with more certainly to come. The case is a machine that manufactures mutually exclusive certainties and cannot falsify a single one to a conclusion. Cooper is not unsolved because the answer is missing. He is unsolved because the evidence cannot hold an answer at all. There is a particular kind of mystery that does not survive because it is deep. It survives because it is shaped to survive the conditions that end it have been removed. The hijacking itself was over 90 seconds of scaffolding 54 years ago. What has run ever since is not an investigation converging on a truth. It is a vortex that hands a parachute back to a dead man's son and says nothing. That adds a new suspect in the year 2026 to a pool already in the thousands. That rewards every confident answer with a book deal. And every book deal debunking. So the uncomfortable thing the case leaves on the table is not who was he. It is a question about us. What does it mean that we can take an event with almost no surviving evidence and build from it an inexhaustible supply of answers, each one certain, each one incompatible with all? Faced with a genuine void, we do not sit with it, we fill it again and again with faces and names and confessions and cover-ups, and then we tear each one down and build the next. The man who called himself Dan Cooper stepped off the back of a Boeing 727 into a storm and vanished. And the empty space he left has been generating answers for 54 years. That empty space is the real subject. Cooper is just the name we gave it. This has been the quiet hill, or if you sat with this one to the end, consider subscribing. We tell the stories the record cannot close. Because some cases are not waiting to be solved. They are built brick by brick so that they never can be. Until next time, keep them in mind. One man, one jump. And every answer the empty space refused to hold.